Hi, Serge. Welcome to online worship part 2. I'm so glad we can connect this way. I really, really miss seeing your faces, but I'm glad that at least we have this space to get together. I hope you're biding well through your shelter-in-place order. I hope that you're not going too stir-crazy, that you're getting outside, that you are finishing your homework. I also really, really hope that none of you have hurt your younger siblings. And I just want to remind you that we are all God's children, so be kind to each other while we're riding this thing out. But tonight, our devotion will continue with a discussion about mental health. And if you remember, throughout the month of March, we have talked about all the ways that you shouldn't carry shame or embarrassment if you struggle with anything that has to do with mental health. And I want to remind you as well that struggling with something like this doesn't always look like a diagnosis or someone who may go see a counselor. Many people who deal with anxiety and depression and an array of other struggles that fit into this category aren't formally diagnosed. And that doesn't mean that their struggles don't matter, or they're not important, or they're not real. They are real and they do matter. Because I, for one, am fairly convinced that this particular subject pertains to pretty much everyone. We all have our burdens to bear. We all struggle in 1,000 different ways. But most importantly, we're all in this together. And that's where we're going to start tonight. We're going to start with this reminder that you may be tired of hearing by now, but just rest assured that I'm going somewhere with this. I want to remind you that we are, no matter what, in this together. It's on our shirts. We say it together all the time. Remember that this was our sacred covenant. It was our promise to one another before the world started suffering this global pandemic. Before we were ordered to shelter in place for everyone's safety, before people started getting sick, before everyone's world collectively got turned upside down, that's what we were saying to each other. We're in this together. And I hope you can remember back to when we began this journey. That night that we all gathered in Wesley Hall, and we shared from this deeply vulnerable place about the worst day of our lives. And if you were someone who wasn't with us during that time, I hope you know that you too have a place here. We're ready and we're willing to go to that vulnerable place with you whenever you're ready to. But for now, let's look at the place in which the world is in right now. I've noticed that since all of this began just a few weeks ago, that people, public figures, celebrities, they're sharing our covenant with the world from their various platforms. It's pretty incredible. Now, you should note that we don't own the copyrights to Ubuntu, but I do want you to recognize with me for a second how amazing it is that from where we stand, it feels like the whole world is joining in a symphony of our promise to one another. And I think that's such an encouraging and a beautiful thing. Because in a way, it feels like all of these people that we may not know or have never even met are fighting the same fight that we are, shouting to each other that we're all in this together. And I think that's an incredibly comforting thought for such an uncertain time in our world and in our lives. So please remember that as we go forward. But in our scripture for tonight, we're going to look at a passage from the book of Exodus. It comes to us from the Old Testament. We're looking at chapter 14, verses 13 through 14. Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. God will fight for you. You need only to be still." I want to provide some context for that verse today. We're reading around the story of Moses, who later in the text, he parts the Red Sea and lets the Israelites cross it. And right as the Israelites reach dry ground on the other side of the water, the path closes and the Egyptians can't get to them, so they're safe. I want to ask you, how many of you have ever felt like the Israelites? What you need to know is that they were living as slaves in Egypt. They were in captivity, which is, as you know, not a healthy environment. They were under the reign of an oppressive ruler. I mean, life just wasn't great for them. It was messy and it was complicated, and I can imagine they probably felt pretty hopeless. And the Egyptians, they were these like metaphorical dark clouds that were hanging over them, that made them prisoners. And you know, I think that sometimes we all feel the same way. We aren't slaves to the Egyptians. We aren't being literally led to the promised land by Moses, but we do all have our dark clouds. We have our oppressive thoughts, things that seem to follow us, the voices in our heads that tell us that we can't keep going. But then remember what happens next in the story. Right when it feels like the Egyptians are going to catch them, Moses uses his staff and he parts the Red Sea, and then they have a path to safety. They have a path to goodness and to love and to freedom, because all along, despite those demons that they were facing every day as slaves, God was fighting for them. Even when they didn't know it or they couldn't see it, God was preparing the way to safety and to love and to freedom. He was going before them, and he was fighting in ways they didn't even realize, and it was all for them. So, when I was in high school, I had this big project I had to do for my French class, and it was a diorama. We had to label all these little pieces that we made in French, and then we had to present it to the class for a grade. And I chose to do my project on planet Earth because I thought it would be easy. I was going to translate all of the continents and the land masses into French. And what you might notice about that project is that the Earth is round, despite some flat earther theories. It is round. So my project was round. It had this cardboard stand that it could sit on so that it would stay in place for me to present it. But the bulk of it was detachable, and it was this round object. And I was at my locker early in the morning that it was due. I was grabbing my books, I was getting ready to turn my project in, and I dropped the thing. And because it was round, it started rolling down the hallway. So I chased after it. And if you ever dropped a ball or something like that and tried to pick it up, you know that you'll get real close to it and you'll almost have your hands on it, and then it'll keep rolling further away from you. So I chased this thing down almost the whole hallway, but then I finally caught it right before it hit the stairs, which was great. And it wasn't damaged, which was even better. I turned it in, I got a good grade on it, but right as I was turning around to go back to class, head back to my locker, I saw that there were 4 people from the hallway that were behind me. They'd been chasing the thing with me. They were trying to help me catch it. They had seen that I was in trouble, and they were trying to help me, but I didn't see them because they were behind me, and they were out of my sight. I think about that a lot in my adult life. I think about how so often when I'm going through something and I have the urge to isolate and not to let anyone in, whenever I want to just take care of things on my own, I think about how there are people who are fighting for me all the time, but I can't see them. Just like the Israelites who had Moses on their side and who had God on their side, I sometimes can't see right in front of me the people who love me and the people who are doing everything that they can to fight for me. Because sometimes it's just easier to feel alone than to let other people in. And so I want you to know that wherever you are in life right now, God is already fighting for you. And what's more is that there is an army of people who are fighting for you too. There are people who are behind you in the crowded hallway while you chase after all those things in life that you want. They're ready to catch you if you fall. They're ready to do everything they can to help pick you up, to make you feel safe and loved. You may not always be able to see us. We may not always be in your line of sight, but I just want you to remember our covenant promise. We belong to one another. And no matter where you are, we're fighting for you. In a minute, you're going to see some messages from friendly people in our ministry who want to reach out and let you know that you aren't alone and that they're fighting for you. But before we get there, I want you to hear this. You have never been alone. And all of those battles that you are fighting, silently or out loud, they mean something to us too, because we're in this with you. There is a symphony of people who are surrounding you in ways that you may not be able to see, who won't let go of you if you fall, who won't turn their backs on you if you stumble, who will never leave you alone in your suffering, because we love you so much. Hear this message.
I'm fighting for you.
I'm fighting for you, Serge.
Bye.
I'm fighting for you.
What's up, Serge? I'm fighting for you.
I'm fighting for you, Serge.
It's Brenna. I just wanted to say hello and that I miss you. I hope you all are doing well, and I'm fighting for you.
Hey, Sergies. Just want you to know I'm armed and I'm fighting for you.
We're fighting for you.
Sometimes people don't remember that the leaders are fighting for you.
And I'm fighting for you too, Serge. I love you so much. Can't wait to see you soon. Bye.